Good evening. I'd like to now call to order the BIDA August 13th, 2025 special call training. Madam Assistant Secretary, would you please take the roll?
Dr. Sabrina Willis, BIDA Chair.
Present.
Secretary Treasurer Dr. Lethea Williams.
Present.
Mrs. Celisa Jefferson.
Present.
Miss Lisa Parker.
Present.
Mayor Bianca Motley Broom.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Jamel McKenzie.
Present.
Vice Chair Tracy Wyatt. And that is all.
If we have any guests, could you all please introduce yourselves also?
Ed Wall, BIDA's financial advisor.
Thank you.
Rory Starkey, Law.
Red.
Okay. Rory Starkey, the Starkey Law Group.
Thank you. Yes? Yes, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Shay Houston, and I'm the CEO and founder of Shay Renee Macarons.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Zara Carr, and I'm an intern for Mayor Pro Tem.
Welcome. Thank you.
Assistant Secretary Treasurer Hannah Adiogan.
Thank you. Are there any additions, deletions, or amendments to the agenda? None? Yeah, a motion to approve the agenda. You have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, we will have a presentation of internal rules, regulations, policies, and recommendations by our BIDA General Counsel, Attorney Wiley.
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. We are continuing the training. I'm looking at the time, and I know we're sort of running close. We're like 30 minutes behind. So if I don't get to the parliamentary rules here, then we can talk about them because it's on the agenda at the 6:30 meeting. We'll just see. And I'm going to try to be quick, but these are important topics for us to talk about tonight. So again, I just want to always recognize and honor my team. We have our managing partner, Starkey Law Group, here with us tonight, and all of the things that we are able to do for BIDA is a result of collective effort of our team. And so I always like to recognize the good folks we have over there. We often joke because 1, 2, 3, 4, the first 4 folks is about 140, 50 years of total collective local government experience. And that says a lot about our age, but we have a seasoned group of people dedicated to this area of public sector law. So we're gonna do a little recap. We remember we were in Atlanta back in February, and we did a training. We covered how what BIDA's role is. We focused on its creation, its mission, and internal governance tools. So today we're gonna build on these principles and move toward more practical and procedural applications of how BIDA actually operates, BIDA's current operations and decision-making processes. Just to quickly recap what we talked about in February, we had this particular, I just copied and pasted what we talked about, but you see BIDA has a lot of powers. If you see to the bottom right corner that BIDA has corporate powers, usually possessed by private corporations. So it has a lot of powers as long as it's not in conflict with the Constitution and laws of this state. And these are constitutional powers because we know that BIDA is a constitutional authority. There are the asterisks to condemn property. BIDA has that authority, but that is subject to mayor and council approval first, and then BIDA can condemn. The other asterisk down to the left, borrow money, issue bonds. BIDA revenue bonds have to be approved by mayor and council. So the questions that I want to talk about tonight, how must BIDA legally function? And does the city have a legal role in BIDA operations? And yes, I use that word because I understand that what's practiced might not be what's consistent with what the Constitution and the laws and city ordinances require. So I want to talk
Attorney
about
Wiley,
that.
Attorney Wiley, Madam Chair, may I ask a question? There are several members of our elected leadership and members of this board, back to your last slide, who argue that BIDA is really just a department of the city. And I think it's important that you address that head on in the context of what you're saying BIDA is, because, you know, that's an objection that's raised to me that I hear quite a lot.
Thank you. And I learned in the last presentation I did for another client, one of the moderators said, when someone asks a question and you know you're going to get to it in your slide, they say, park it. So I'm going to ask you to park that question because I have that exact quote in this presentation. So thank you, Brian, for always being on top and ahead. Okay, so we know that BIDA is a creature of the state. BIDA was not created by the city council. BIDA was created by the Georgia legislature. It was a referendum. It's a constitutional amendment. And it is an independent entity. That sort of speaks to what Brian was just speaking to. BIDA was created to operate as a separate public corporation independent from the city of College Park. BIDA is not a city department. And when I say independent, and I'm going to go on here, but there is a collaborative relationship and partnership arrangement, an important one between BIDA and the city of College Park. It is important that that relationship be healthy and function and allow each entity to function within the limits of their legal authority. So the limited legal relationship that's noted in the charter is restricted to two specific instances. So we know that BIDA, mayor and council appoints the 5 of the 7 board members. We have the mayor and the mayor pro tem who serve by virtue of their title. And other than the power of appointment, the BIDA's constitution only gives the city 2 explicit rights of approval over BIDA affairs. Yes, ma'am.
What does that last bullet point mean?
Other than the power of appointment. So this is, I don't want to get too wonky here. As my partner, I don't want this to be too wonky like lawyers talk. But there's a theory in the law that when something is in the legislation specifically, giving someone powers, that you can properly infer that you don't have any powers beyond what was specifically given. And so what this says, and I'm going to follow up on this, Dr. Williams, is that the charter, the constitutional legislation that created BIDA, only gives the city 2 explicit rights of approval over BIDA affairs. This is true. And I'll go forward. But that answer your question? Maybe if I go a little further.
Okay, go ahead.
Stop me if I stop me again. So I won't have to go over all these things. You know, we know the composition. Y'all know this. And I realize that I haven't emailed you all these PowerPoints, so I'm going to do that by the end of the week, so you all can just have them if you like. But so we know that BIDA's powers are broad, and under number 4, you see the governance and internal rules, bylaws and standards of procedures. The charter authorizes BIDA to adopt internal rules to govern its operation, ensuring consistency in decision making. We know, and this is just, you've seen this before too. So BIDA was created by a local constitutional amendment. And you see this hierarchy of laws. So you have the Georgia Constitution, which is the supreme law of this state. And then you have local constitutional amendments. Then you have state statutes, local acts, and local ordinances. Now, local constitutional amendments do not have broad statewide authority. They only apply in the jurisdiction in which it was created. But as for BIDA, our constitutional authority ranks pretty high. We are a part of the Georgia Constitution. So the city has limited approval rights over BIDA. And why? Because the Georgia Constitution says so. So here are the two limitations, Dr. Williams. It said, and this is straight from the charter, and I cite the section. It says that BIDA may only exercise eminent domain with prior council approval. Now, this is the only operational power explicitly requiring city approval in the constitutional charter. You see the quote, BIDA condemnation upon approval of the mayor and council of the city of College Park. The second explicit approval is the issuance and refunding of revenue bonds. BIDA is authorized to provide by resolution for the issuance of negotiable revenue bonds subject to the approval by the mayor and council. So this restriction is tied to debt obligation and does not extend to greater financial or contractual decisions that this body makes. So what does this mean, Dr. Williams? There's a Latin term that we learn in law school. I probably can't say it today. Expressio unius est. I don't know. Madam Mayor may be able to do it better than me. But what that means, it's a Latin term. It says the express mention of one thing excludes all others. So look at the two things that the Georgia Constitution says the city has approval rights over BIDA. And then the second one is, we're not as prophetic as the Latin, but this is a quote from the law, that the legislature said what it meant and meant what it said. If the legislature had intended to give the city expanded operational control over BIDA, it would have done so, but it did not. So BIDA's operational autonomy is constitutionally sound. So apart from the two exceptions, none of BIDA's constitutionally enumerated powers require city review, approval, or consent. That does not mean that we don't work in cooperation with the city. I want to make that clear and put that caveat in there, and that is not anything in suggesting, but we have to know who we are and operate within the scope of our authority, and together we'll be great. So BIDA can exercise all of those functions below autonomously as a state-created entity. Buy and sell property. It can hire employees and consultants. It can execute contracts and leases. It can maintain and manage projects, accept grants and loans. It can borrow money and issue bonds, can issue revenue bonds. It can exercise corporate powers akin to private entities as long as it's not in conflict with the law. So none of these enumerated powers have any kind of condition of prior approval. This is it in the Constitution. It's not what we want, it's what it is. So then I found the Georgia Supreme Court case. BIDA's operational autonomy has been affirmed by the Georgia Supreme Court. It's Wyatt versus City of College Park. It's a 2007 case. And at first I got excited because I thought it was Vice Chair Tracy Wyatt, and he can come up and give us a tutorial on what happened, but it's an April Wyatt. And she was a member, she was a BIDA board member. So April Wyatt was appointed in 2005 to BIDA for a 4-year term. BIDA's enabling legislation, the 1980 LCA, that's the Local Constitutional Amendment, requires members to be city residents for 6 months prior to appointment. There's no ward residency requirement. In 2006, the mayor and city council voted to remove Wyatt because she did not reside in Ward 2. And this is what the court said, and the CP by the court did that, College Park BIDA. Neither the LCA, the Local Constitutional Amendment, nor BIDA bylaws provided for removal without cause. So Wyatt filed suit seeking reinstatement. So Wyatt argued that the city lacked authority to remove her absent legal cause. Her 4-year term meant she did not serve at the city's pleasure, and she alleged that the city's action violated her due process. She didn't get proper notice. She didn't have a hearing. Those were her allegations. The city said, and your current city attorney, my friend and colleague, Winston Denmark, was a part of this case. He represented the city, and he argued that removal was valid under the city's authority, and that they also tried to justify their action by claiming that the city had broad control over BIDA membership and BIDA's governance. So what did the court say? The court's ruling targeted the city's unlawful acts. This is what the court said, Georgia Supreme Court in a unanimous decision. The city lacked removal power. The LCA, the local constitutional amendment, and bylaws do not allow removal without cause. Ward residency was not a legal qualification. Removal on that ground was unlawful. Wyatt's term was fixed. She could not be removed at will. And then the court went on to say that BIDA had autonomy in its internal government. The court, signing to the local constitutional amendment, said, and he cited the same thing that we've been talking about since February, that the constitutional amendment grants BIDA the exclusive power to make rules and regulations for its own government. So finally the court said, because the Fulton County Superior Court had ordered BIDA to go and create rules as regarding how you can remove members, and that got reversed. The court said you can't compel BIDA to enact specific removal processes. That decision lies within BIDA's discretion, unless there is gross abuse. So the key takeaways: the court affirmed that BIDA's independence has independence from city interference. If the city lacks power over who sits on the board, it necessarily lacks power to override the decisions of a duly constituted board that's acting within the scope of its authority. It's just a matter of logic. Another takeaway, that the control of membership is a higher level power than spending oversight. And what I mean by that, removing a board member directly alters the governing body itself. That's the most intrusive form of control and oversight. If the city cannot exercise that high level of control, it cannot logically claim a lesser but still intrusive power, second guessing or vetoing the authority's operational and financial decisions after funds have been lawfully appropriated to BIDA. Unilateral She is not. I did my due diligence. Thank you. I asked that question. If she was a cousin, so yeah, no, she is not related. So here's what: if you allow unilateral budgetary control, that what I mean is after the mayor and council have gone through the budget, and I've watched their hearings. I don't know how y'all do it, Mayor Pro Tem, but y'all go through all of that stuff relentlessly, and then there's a decision to vote on the budget. And there's allocations made. That and the allocations to BIDA have specific line items. That is mayor and council approval. That is mayor and council approval. So if you allow the city to control the funds after allocation, it will permit the city to achieve indirectly what Wyatt, the case law Wyatt forbids directly, and that is usurping the authority's discretion and substituting its own judgment for that of the body legally charged with making those decisions. So the enabling legislation grants BIDA the discretion to make rules for its own and to execute contracts, manage projects, and accept or expend funds. And again, once the city has lawfully budgeted and allocated those funds to BIDA, those funds are under BIDA's exclusive control for purposes consistent with its charter, and it can't be subject to post-allocation. And I say political approval because just by the nature of mayor and council, it's they're a political entity. So if the city can block or redirect funds after allocation, it could effectively nullify the board's will, just as removal of members would have nullified the board's composition in Wyatt. The Supreme Court's reasoning makes clear that such interference is inconsistent with the operational independence guaranteed by the constitutional enabling legislation. Let's talk about money. So, I'm not sure who that man is. Okay, it's an AI-generated person, but he looks like he's standing in front of a bank vault. So here's what the charter says. And all monies received pursuant to the authority of this act shall be deemed to be trust funds to be held and applied solely as provided in this act. So what this does not say is that the city serves as a trustee or gatekeeper of BIDA's funds. We know that the financial director is a custodian of the funds, but let's not conflate custodian with control. If BIDA is operating within the scope of its allocated budget for line item expenses that have been approved by mayor and council through its deliberative budget process, then this body has the right to draw down because it is an independent body and there is no need for a separate approval. That will be, to have a separate approval will be rendering BIDA without authority, just without authority. So proper legal obligation for proper fund management. The city holds the funds. The BIDA drawdowns for the allocated funds for the express purposes allowed in the budget. And that rests with BIDA's board and officers. You get to determine that. That does not rest with city officials. And let me just say that, not speaking to any specific contract, but when BIDA enters into contractual obligations, it cannot then say, well, we can't honor our obligation because we have to wait for another set of approval. When you enter your contracts, nothing in any of your contracts say that payment will be subject to the separate approval by the mayor and council of the city of College Park. It doesn't say that. If you violate the contract, if you breach it, BIDA will be sued. It's BIDA's legal obligation and will be BIDA's legal liability if it does not do as it has contractually obligated to do. And I always ask this question. What happens if, when it goes up for approval, what if you all have approved something that you need, let's say training? The law requires you to get your training. What happens if that's delayed or denied? Then you can't fulfill your obligations as a board member. The law requires you to get your training so that you can bring your best knowledge to fulfill your position. So a contractual funding relationship is contemplated in BIDA's constitutional charter. The dreaded IGA, that's a bad word. I don't know if that's a bad word, or maybe we can call it a MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, Memorandum of Agreement. I see that on the city's agenda that there is an intergovernmental agreement for BIDA on the agenda for next Monday. I will say that the city attorney has not sent me that proposed agreement. I have no idea what that is, and I would like to at least see it. Can we see it? It would have been nice if it was a collaborative effort, and that way the city and BIDA could iron out any differences on how things should proceed functionally in terms of day-to-day administration, but I have not seen it. I'll watch the meeting or I will attend. So the city is not required to fund BIDA. So the city, going back to the first sentence, the city may appropriate funds to BIDA by contract or ordinance. So the contract would be an IGA. The constitutional amendment contemplates an IGA between the city and BIDA. It's right there. And it says that that contract will obligate the city to make payment to the authority upon such terms as may be provided in the contract. A contract is an IGA. The Georgia Constitution created this 1980, 45 years ago, said y'all need to have an intergovernmental agreement by the city. So, and this is not personal to Madam City Manager who is currently serving. None of this is just timely because I think we have been operating in a way that has not been consistent with what the Constitution provides and what the city ordinance provides. And so this is just an effort for us to get it right. You know, the late, great Dr. Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better. When we know what the rule says, when we can see it in black and white, let's do better. Let's do something different. It may be uncomfortable, but I don't think it will be as uncomfortable as some people may think, because we're all working together. This is still going to be a collaborative relationship. So the city charter expressly precludes the city manager from having any involvement with BIDA. Section 4-7C, the city manager shall not have or exercise any control over the College Park Planning Commission, Board of Zoning Appeals, Recreation Commission, or other special board, commission, committee, authority, or body set up under any Georgia law, any general law. BIDA was set up by general law, constitutional. And also that $10,000 spending limit on the city manager's authority under section 47I only applies to the payment of city contracts. BIDA's expenditures do not constitute city contracts. When the city council confers by way of budget the allocated funds, that's not a contract. So the city manager has no authority to approve or withhold payment of BIDA contracts, to review or dispute BIDA expenditures, or to condition disbursements authorized by the BIDA board. This is not a personal thing. She's not here, but if she was, I wish she was, because it's just the law. And the city's charter has to be followed, just like we expect any other citizen to follow the rules of the city. We need to follow the rules of the charter. So again, this needs to be a collaborative rather than a supervisory relationship. That is what BIDA would love to have. That's what my law partner and I are advocating for. That's what I think would be best for the city and BIDA. And we should collaborate by contract. You know, these relationships can be voluntary and cooperative and not supervisory, because BIDA is not a subordinate entity to the city. It is a collaborative partner. So this is just my little organizational chart that sort of just puts all of that, everything that I said, into visual relations, because it shows how connected we are. City of College Park, you appoint the members to the BIDA board. The city manager, you have our economic director for the city, and he also serves as the executive director for BIDA. He wears two hats. The administrative assistant and assistant secretary to BIDA work for the city. And so we're all related, we're family, and I just think it's time for us to start doing the right thing, even if it's not what we're used to, and even if it seems there seems some fear involved. Let's talk those out. Let's account for any fears that might exist. Let's put it in the contract. Let's account for it in the contract. Thank you. I'll let it go. Just went 30 minutes. So anybody have any more questions? Thank you, board members.
We have a question. Okay, Ms. Jefferson?
Thank you, Attorney Wiley, for your presentation. I just have a question. I know that your overview included the powers of BIDA, correct?
Yes.
But when it comes to the bylaws, I know that you focused in on the charter. When it comes to the bylaws to delimit the actual process and duties of utilizing city employees, that's where my conflict comes into play with your presentation, because I think your presentation was more from the broad perspective from the charter. So from delimited from the charter, we have the bylaws, and delimited from that, we have the SOPs. So in those custodial duties of a city employee, BIDA cannot dictate the process and procedures that the city has with their employee.
Correct.
And because we don't have an intergovernmental agreement, and we're utilizing the city employees as our custodial agents, they still have to adhere to the city's policies and procedures, which is going through the city manager.
Well, yes.
So,
and I saw your email. I saw your email.
And as well as due to the fact that we're utilizing a city employee, that city employee is just that, city employee. So therefore, mayor and council has authority over their duties and their position. So I do believe in our bylaws in that section 4, that is the hence reason why the director of finance has sole obligations of managing our funds approved through mayor and council, and therefore any of those financial transactions, that city employee still has to adhere to mayor and council's and the city's policies and procedures. And I just didn't want that to be overlooked.
Yes.
Because I understand that you're focusing on the powers of the charter, but when it comes to the specific custodial duties and processes and procedures, we need to kind of, go down to the next level.
So again, I would focus on the charter because that's the supreme law. It's over any ordinance. That's the law. That's a state law. But here's why I respectfully differ with your analysis on that, because The city finance director has care, it says on the bylaws section 4, and those are our internal rules. It says that he has care and custody over BIDA funds. It does not say he has control over BIDA funds. That's a difference. The bank, whoever you bank with, your banker has care and custody of your money, but when you go to get your money lawfully, the bank can't say, well, no, I have to go and ask the board of directors of the bank if you can draw down money that properly belongs to you. So my response to your very, very understandable position is that BIDA does not care, nor can it dictate how the city manager manages her employees. So if she creates a process by which the city finance director, before he cuts a check, it has to be signed off by her, then that's internal operations of the city. We're not interested in that. Where the problem comes in, though, is when the care and custody becomes control and have veto power or delay power over BIDA's obligations. That's care and custody does not mean control. And when you say that it has to be approved by mayor and council, my position is that when mayor and council approve its annual budget, and they go through painstaking lengths to do that budget. I've seen them. I watched the meetings. I fell asleep and I woke up and they were still in the budget meetings. And they go line by line. And I watched specifically for BIDA. They considered BIDA's expenditures. They consider our expenses. They talked about it. They deliberated and they approved the budget. That's the mayor and council approval. That does not mean that every individual disbursement has to go back to council for approval. That would be almost violating mayor and council's directive. And so, however the Madam City Manager wants to manage her finance director, we have no problems with it. Where I draw a line for legally, as a legal attorney for BIDA, is that BIDA's authority is being subjected to a person, an office, I'm gonna say a person, an office that by its own charter has no involvement in BIDA affairs. I think a compromise would be, we have the two highest elected officials in this city that serve on BIDA. We have the mayor and we have the mayor pro tem. If the city manager needs to sign off on something, then let it go. If it's BIDA related, let the mayor or the mayor pro tem sign over her signature. The mayor is not gonna, and the mayor pro tem won't sign anything that they serve on BIDA. They know what the board has approved. They know what the budget is. They're not gonna sign an expenditure that's unauthorized. There's your check and balance. And so that would be a temporary stopgap that I would recommend that you all consider working out until we get an IGA negotiated.
So I would like to follow up with that. So, and I do understand where your perspective is, where it lies with that, but given the fact that our bylaws has that the director of finance has custody of all funds. It didn't say budget, didn't say account, it said all funds. And that the director of finance, in order to facilitate their responsibilities of, whatever is going to be involved with managing all funds, it says it needs the authority of the BIDA and mayor and council. So given that, you still, regardless of what positioning, they still have the power. And I understand that you're saying that that's care and custody, but they still, involved in that, they also have a directive of where their authority lies in order for them to continue that care and authority. And that's what the authority of the approval from BIDA as well as mayor and council.
And I think what's being missed, and I'll sit down for this, is that there are expenditures that don't even come to BIDA for BIDA's approval. And they're being rerouted directly to mayor and council. Mayor and council has already approved BIDA's line item budget. Why does BIDA need to go back for second approval? That is not consistent with what the Constitution Amendment says. And the approval, this is what it says: the city of director of finance shall sign all orders and checks for the payment of money and shall pay out and disperse such monies under the direction of the members of the Board of the Authority and the direction of the mayor and council for the city of College Park. My position is that the approved budget is the direction of the mayor and city of College Park. That's approve the budget. BIDA is drawing down from those allocated funds, so BIDA can have a meeting, vote on the payment of something, send it to the finance director, whatever the city manager needs to do to oversee her finance director, that's fine. My concern is that giving someone veto power or giving the city now veto power over a matter that's within the scope of BIDA's authority and pursuant to approved budget allocation is a step too far.
Madam Chair, ma'am. Ma'am.
Okay, yes.
I want
Mayor
to
Pro
thank
Tem.
you, Attorney Wiley, for such a thorough presentation. And I think the quandary that we have is it's a matter of paper versus practice, okay? In a perfect world, everything that you've put there based on the BIDA charter would be the way it is. However, we have a system where since BIDA was incepted, the practice was different. And I think what has always been challenging for specifically the executive director of BIDA, who's also in the position of the director of economic development, wearing those two hats is a challenge because the executive director must answer, well, the economic development director must answer to the city manager.
Yes.
But at the same time, they have a fiduciary duty
To carry out.
to BIDA. And again, the way that we have practiced this as a city, the monies even, BIDA, people say it all the time, BIDA owes this money because BIDA has signed off on these bonds. And so we do have quite a bit of debt. And that debt is on behalf of the city of College Park. It's kind of like, how do we separate the salt from the pepper? Okay? And in the shaker, when you got salt and pepper. So, the sand from the pieces of black sand from the white sand on the beach. So I was interested. My question was going to be, what did you see that we could do? Now, I know there's a few things that have come through the council specific, and it was kind of like when we did the Price Barbershop, we're looking at that the executive director did because a lot of that, some of the funding was coming through my community enhancement budget, but it's not often that BIDA's bills come through the council. Had it been, we would not have had some of the situations that we're discussing even later on the next meeting. So I was going to ask you, what did you think the direction is that we should take? Because again, we are in a practice that doesn't necessarily coincide with the paper. But I do hear what Board Member Jefferson is saying in terms of we have city staff. Once you bring city staff working for BIDA, it's compromising because they want to keep their good government jobs.
Yes.
All right. So it's almost as if to pull this off, you would have to have persons who are directly hired by the BIDA board to work for BIDA. But then you still have this financial relationship where BIDA doesn't have money except for what is budgeted, and that budget is determined by the council. I definitely hear you in terms of your concerns about the fact that once a budget is adopted for BIDA, why should it come back to the city? But we ourselves adopt a budget. I got $900,000 that is in my budget right now, and I've got line items that I've created for myself. But if I spend more than $9,999, I've got to go back to the council myself.
But you're not a.
But I know, and that's some city council. That's how the city, we have ours.
Yes.
And you're saying BIDA doesn't have that. So the only concern that I have with your suggestion, and maybe we can continue to brainstorm on how to transition from this, is myself and the mayor, we're elected officials, so we cannot have authority to sign off on checks. That's a no-no. We can sign contracts, contractual agreements. We can vote. So just wanted you to know that. So we got to still look at if that was plan A, let's go back to the drawing board. But I do appreciate where you're trying to go and the clarity, because I too am a stickler for if it is written, we follow it.
Thank you.
Yes, Vice Chair. Okay, Mr. Hooker.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. I think it's important to underscore what Mayor Pro Tem brought up, in that those of us who are city employees and also serving BIDA serve the city first. I've shared with this board that in my role, I'm compromised relative to what I can do. So the way I come to understand it is BIDA has chosen, outside of its charter through its bylaws, BIDA has chosen to employ the Economic Development Director of the city as its executive director, and BIDA has chosen to engage the finance director of the city as its finance director. That's a choice that BIDA has made, and that choice comes with consequences, because both the Economic Development Director and the finance director report to the city manager. And the city manager needs to have appropriate authority and control over her employees. So as long as, and one of the things I hear in this role is, well, that's the way we've always done it. Fine. But just understand that by continuing to accept bylaws where BIDA employs city employees, there will be additional constraints, and the IGA will have to deal with that. Attorney Wiley does a great job of defining what BIDA is capable of at operating under its charter. But BIDA has limited itself with its bylaws and its traditions. And frankly, as a city employee, I would encourage you to continue to do that for various reasons, including just practical reasons at this point. But the other thing that I disagree with is people say BIDA has no money. The second part of the lesson today from Ed Wall is going to be talking about the things BIDA should be doing to have BIDA money. If BIDA wants to operate under its charter, it needs to behave in a manner of being worthy to operate under its charter. If BIDA is just going to spend the city's money and not do things to generate its income, then you might as well continue on with the city's employees. So I wanted to bring that up just to clarify why we are where we are. And I don't think personally, in either of my roles, that BIDA is quite ready to move forward full independence with its own finance person, its own executive director. But that's why we're here, trying to set up financial management policies, trying to set up parliamentary procedures that are clear, trying to set up an intergovernmental agreement with the city of College Park. Those things put BIDA on track to exercise a great deal more independence. So thank you. I mean, we agree on a lot. That's an area where we kind of have a little bit of daylight.
No, I don't think we do, because I believe that this is a partnership, collaborative. And I have written IGAs between development authorities and cities, and those the cities share, afford their city employees to the development authorities. This is not uncommon. So the problem or the concern or issues that we have here in College Park are not unique, and other jurisdictions have found a way to deal with this in a negotiated IGA that will give the assurance, all of the assurances that you raised and the concerns you raised, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. We can address those in an IGA. We can, and we should, but not at the expense of BIDA being treated as a department of the city. It is a constitutional, state-created entity. It is not a city department. And I think we can, both of those, we can coexist peacefully with an IGA that defines all those roles and responsibilities. And what those are, we have a meeting scheduled with the city attorney next Wednesday. We're going to his office, and Ed Wall's going to mediate. I don't know, or play referee, umpire. I don't know what you're going to do, Ed. But we're going to go and discuss these hard issues with the city attorney and see if we can come to some common ground. So I hope Mayor and Council do not approve an IGA next Monday that we have not even seen nor had any input in. So Thank you.
Mr. Wyatt, Vice Chair.
No, I withdraw.
You withdraw, anybody else?
Get head wall and get a little, so I withdraw.
None, okay. Next, do we want to take a break first? Okay, we're gonna do the egg go first, okay, okay. I apologize for the lateness too. We will now have a presentation, for BIDA, how they generate revenue to accomplish its mission by BIDA financial, consultant Ed Wall, so thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
So what Brian Hooker's passed out to you is an Excel spreadsheet for calculation of tax abatement. You all have seen this before. You know, various developers have come before you for a tax abatement, and I've run these numbers and presented it to you, but we've never taken the time to go through it point by point. And Brian thought it'd be a good idea if I did, so that you all had a firm grasp of what all these columns and numbers mean. So if you would, look at like the third paragraph. I've done a theoretical project X, and it says value for tax purposes. The fair market value is $100 million. Y'all know for taxes, Georgia law says that property is assessed at 40% of fair market value. So for tax purposes, this project X would have a $40 million tax value. And since it's real estate, I've increased it by 2% per year. And I'm assuming that it would go up the value of 2% per year. You all, as an entity, BIDA, have the right to take property off of the tax rolls. Any property owned by you or any other development authority in the state is exempt from property taxes. What property taxes would you be exempting? Fulton County levies 8.87 mills. You can see Fulton County bonds are 0.17 mills. The schools are 17.08 mills. Your hotel district, if it was a hotel in College Park, has a 20 mil levy. There's a special district around the GICC. So if a property is inside that special district, it has 20 mil levy. There's a CID, 5 mills. And then City College Park itself has a millage rate of 11.608 mills. So people who pay property taxes, if they're hotels and in the special district, there's extra 40 mills that they would pay. In this example I've given, 62.38% goes to City College Park, 20.65 to the schools, and 10.93 to the county. It's only that high because of the hotel and the special district. And the reason why those millage rates are okay is because of your location. You're next to the world's busiest airport. And so hoteliers are willing to pay that, and particularly in the GICC special district, because you have a station on the SkyTrain that right here that brings people to their businesses. And so when you do a property tax abatement, you're abating these taxes, whatever percentage you want to do. So then go down, you can see the line items, the lines, not the columns, year 1 through year 10. In this particular example, I did a 10-year tax abatement. So you can see the first column, 40 million, that was the assessed value. Notice it's going up 2% a year. The next column is the total tax that business would pay on a $100 million development. And it'd be $3.3 million in the first year, and down in year 10, it'd be $3.9 million because it's growing at 2% a year. And then the next column is a percentage of abatement. A regular abatement that DeKalb gives, Cobb gives, Gwinnett gives, Fulton County gives, we call it the regular way abatement, is a 10-year abatement starting at 50%, declining 5% a year. You are not bound by that regular way. If you wanted to do something different than this because it was a project that you really wanted, you could. The next thing is Project X savings. That abatement percentage gives them this amount of savings each year for a total of $9,668,000 in property taxes. Over to the right, you can see that's the amount of money that they would pay out of the $3 million total tax bill after their savings. That column is what they would pay. Then over to the right further, you can see after the abatement, that's how much money College Park would get, Fulton County would get, and Fulton Schools would get. And then go over to the far right. This is the thing that Brian wanted me to highlight. You all get to charge a fee for any bond issue that you do on behalf of private entities, and it's 1/8 of 1% of the principal amount. So that $100 million bond issue times 1/8 of 1% is $125,000 that will be paid at the closing. Each year on the anniversary date of the closing, you will get 1/8 of 1% on the outstanding principal balance. I try to write into the documents that so that there's no argument about what the outstanding principal balance is. I just decline it by 10% a year since it's a 10-year transaction. So the next year is $90 million minus the $10 million reduction times 1/8 of 1% is $112,000. So the total of this transaction would make BIDA $687,500. These fees are how the Fulton Development Authority, DeKalb Development Authority, Cobb Development Authority, Gwinnett Development Authority, it's what they live on. It's how they make revenues. That's what they do. And so, yes, ma'am?
I'm sorry. Dr. Williams.
Has College Park BIDA ever charged an admin fee at any point?
Yes, ma'am. So you charge it on the Marriott Gateway Hotel, the 400-room hotel that has Champions in it. You charge it on the Spring Hill Suites. You charge it on the Marriott Renaissance. And you charge it on the Summersby project.
Oh, is that the last hotel that was built?
Summersby is an apartment project on West Fayetteville Road.
Because my next question was going to be, when was the last project that we charged our admin?
I think Summersby was 2 or 3 years ago. And so when I go over the finances, and you all remember at the last retreat we had in Midtown, the 1/8 of 1% fees have no bond debt service against it. So that is the one thing in your current budget that is not spoken for in any other way. And so I think it's $200,000 or $300,000 a year that you get now out of these 1/8 of 1% fees on existing transactions. Maybe a wee bit more than that, but somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000 a year. And so, if I could take your attention back across the page, look at the Project X payment. It's $1,654,000 in year one, and it totals $3,756,000 in year two. Another way that development authorities make money is you make the developer pay you a pilot payment equal to that. So rather than pay it to College Park, Fulton County, or Fulton County Schools, you have it paid directly to you. And then you would use that for various projects. Pilot payments have been used by you to finance the Marriott Gateway and the Spring Hill Suites and the first office building. The city went to Fulton County and Fulton Schools and said, we just put $100 million in a convention center and we don't have a headquarters hotel. We opened in 2001, it's 2004, we haven't gotten one. If y'all remember, the planes crashed into the World Trade Center in 2001 and the hospitality industry took a big hit. Nobody would build a hotel, and to make a convention center work, you have to have a headquarters hotel. And so City College Park sent an RFP out to developers and says, whoever asks us for the least amount of money as an incentive, that's who we'll go with. And a company called Gateway came with the best proposal. We got 4 proposals, and the City of College Park, Mayor and Council, and the BIDA board met jointly, and they picked that Gateway crowd. And we concocted a plan where we would do pilot payments, and the pilot payments, the future property taxes, instead of making property tax payments to the entities, they made pilot payments to BIDA, and you use that money to sink $30 million in bonds that we sold and gave to them as an incentive to build those hotels back in 2006. Maybe it was 2007. And you haven't done pilots since then. Who else has done pilots? Forest Park used pilots to pay the Army $30 million for Fort Gillem. They had to finance $16 million in bonds for infrastructure. They owed the Army $30 million. It was $46 million for a little town like Forest Park. They went to the school board in the county and said, we'd like to have our development authority do tax abatements on businesses that go into Fort Gillem. And instead of paying taxes, we'll do pilot payments until we get enough money that we've paid off the Army so we don't have to levy a property tax on the citizens of Forest Park. They all agreed to it from 2014 to 2020. They did, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 transactions with pilot payments. They got enough money to pay off the Army without levying a property tax. And then they went to what's here calling the state for years. All their future tax abatements included paying all those entities. Other places that have used pilot payments, Lilburn used one to build a 700 space parking deck in their downtown to get 400 spaces for an apartment developer for 280 units downtown and 300 public spaces. Sandy Springs has used the pilot payments to build a parking deck. Brookhaven has used pilot payments. They're not popular because you're cutting out other governments, but sometimes they're necessary and you can talk other governments into doing it. And the reason why, you're not taking any money out of their pocket. All this money only exists because this developer is bringing a $100 million project. So you're not reaching into anybody's pocket, taking it out. It's an opportunity cost. You're taking money they would otherwise get. So in this transaction, you all, as BIDA, would make $687,500. And if you did a pilot payment, you would make another $26,565,000 over a 10-year life. How did I do, Mr. Hooker?
Well, sir, but I think everyone's thoroughly confused at this point. So it's time for some Q&A.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Attorney Wiley.
I just want to make clear that the money you're talking about, under the charter, those are BIDA funds that you're held in trust to do BIDA activity. So you hold those funds and you use them to do other deals. You use them to fund your operations and to become self-independent. Or if we had an IGA, as Brian once said, we can pay back the city all of the money, 9 million, 14. We can use those funds in a coordinated way with an IGA so we can pay down the debt that's owed to the city. Either way, it will make BIDA, it will help BIDA to operate and not be, not a drain, but it will help BIDA be a financial partner with the city, and it will allow us to become debt-free with the city.
All right. Okay, Mr. Hooker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you, Ed, for sharing that, because it's important that BIDA understands what its primary mission is. And what Ed hinted at, but I want to make clear, the awarding of incentives or inducements is a big part of BIDA's mission, not to do giveaways. Incentives, the requirement for us professionals in the incentive space is but for. The developer has made a clear and credible argument that their project won't pencil unless they get some property tax relief, for example. So you have land that has nothing on it that's not generating any property taxes, and there's the opportunity by agreeing to allow the developer to save on future property taxes that a project can happen. BIDA's time frame should be 10 years. And over those 10 years, collecting the fees or even portions or all of the pilot payments that Ed mentioned. The city's time frame is 30, 40, 50 years. And in year 11, all of a sudden, land that was producing nothing for the city is generating $3 million. And so the city is the long-term beneficiary by far from any of these transactions where incentives are offered. However, I've heard some elected and appointed officials poo-poo incentives at all. And if BIDA is Some folks have said the only thing BIDA should be doing is selling land. Well, yeah, technically BIDA can make a little money selling land. That won't last forever. These do. These go on and on and on. So next month, BIDA is going to have 2 requests for incentives for fairly large projects. And the purpose of today was to make sure you understand what is here and between now and next month. If you need to call me, you need to set up an appointment with me or with Ed, we will go through this in more detail with you. We want you to be ready to objectively look at the requests that come before this board next month and in following months. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair. I was,
Okay, Ms. Jefferson.
Mr. Wall, thank you for your presentation. Question, when we received the last when we received that last, settlement, I think it was in 2023, how were those funds allocated? So when, in essence, overall, when BIDA gets to the point to eventually sell land and make some revenue, where does that allocation go? Does it first go towards the general fund in the city?
So this was the refinance of the part of the first office building
Yes.
where they had failed to make pilot payments, so we
Yes.
sued them. And so in that negotiation, they paid, I don't know, it was like $1.8 million in reimbursement. It went through you, but it went to the city general fund.
Got it.
Because since 2010, the city general fund had had to carry the payments on the pilot bonds. They had gone to the tax assessor and asked for a reduction in their assessed value, which made the pilot payments less. And so they on purpose, when we sold bonds in 2008, we were counting on the pilot payments on a $21 million bill, and they got the tax assessor to drop it to 14 million, and they left our general fund to carry the difference. So we made them pay all that back. We paid it to the general fund. They're making a pilot payment to you of $130,000 a year. It's up to you whether you want to keep it or give it to the city.
Yeah, so that was going to be my point. I think that it would be advantageous for us, if our procedures are to pay debt first, which it should be. I would agree with that. But if that is the case, we have to understand that as we're paying this debt and as we are needing funds to attract more developers, and then given the fact that what you were saying, Director Hooker, of some incentives for these developers, but also I think that our community is greatly impacted by income disparities. So we really sometimes, to me, with these developers, we miss the opportunity to have workforce development, to have community benefits in order to improve our quality of life for our community. And I truly believe that's the core purpose of BIDA. The city can operate at a business factor, but our factors really should be more community oriented to improve the livelihood as well as life, a quality of living in the city of College Park. And I think that's where we have kind of missed that ballpark. So I would hope what we had done in the past, we had created, it was like a guidelines for when developers will come in, and we would discuss with them based upon where your location, whatever they were interested in the city, in the council, the district that it was going to impact, what are the other needs that are needed in that community. So we kind of had, some just overall basic guidelines of what to ask these developers for as they come in and look at us for economic opportunities. But I just want to reiterate that our goal is to pay off debt first, and then from there we need to have a decision on what else we're going to utilize those funds for to attract better developers.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
And I
Mr.
know,
Wallace.
Dr. Williams, you're up next, but what I've got to say is directly related to what Board Member Jefferson just said. So College Park, BIDA has only done 4 tax abatements in my 30 years with y'all. It's wild, but it's the Marriott Gateway, the Spring Hill Suites, the Renaissance, and the office building. the first office building. The second one didn't get a tax abatement. So you all have not done tax abatements. It was the wishes of the leadership to only give it in very difficult situations where you wouldn't get it otherwise. Many other jurisdictions freely give the tax abatement, but in exchange for it, they ask for something called a community benefits agreement, where they pay sidewalks, they do recreation, they do pools, they do this, that, and other thing. And the other one is a lot of them do it for apartments, and they mandate for a tax abatement, they have to take certain percentage of them for a percentage of the area median income. So say Invest Atlanta is the best example. If you want a tax abatement from the Invest Atlanta, which is called the Atlanta Development Authority, you have to reserve 20% of the units for folks who only make 60% of the area median income. So it's for like police officers, firemen, and they recognize that a developer won't do that unless they get something for it, and that something for it is free taxes. And so you all have, Decatur's a city like you. Decatur's only ever done one tax abatement that I know of in the 30 years I've represented Decatur. So I just wanted to segue into that you have left a lot of community benefits you could have gotten, but it's because you didn't give anything to get it.
Exactly.
Thank you,
Okay.
Dr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Walls. Dr. Williams.
Thank you. I have a two-part question for Mr. Wall and Mr. Hooker. In your expert opinion, the first part is, Mr. Wall, is it best for College Park to BIDA to offer the pilot or the admin fee? And for Mr. Hooker, in terms of incentivized benefits, what are the things that attract interested parties in coming to a city to build?
So I'll go first. It's clearly more beneficial to you, BIDA, and to the city if you do a pilot transaction, because you're taking the county and the school board's money, and so you make a lot more money. But that could be the goose that, you could kill the goose that laid the golden egg. You need to have valid, good points as to why you're not paying the schools or the county any money. So like I gave you an example, Fort Gillum and Forest Park. It was an Army base. It was nothing. The Army closed it. So now they've got, I don't know, $4 billion of investment over there, employing 4,500 jobs that didn't used to exist. Those are the things that they offered, and the county and the school board agreed to participate. Again, they weren't taking any money out of their pocket. They just took new stuff from new development that would come. So it was a compelling reason they agreed to it. Here in your own case, you made a compelling argument to the school board and the county that you all had $100 million in this facility and you couldn't get a headquarters hotel. So they agreed to let you capture a pilot. So it's more beneficial to you to do a pilot deal, but you got to have a compelling reason to do it other than just making money. Mr. Hooker?
It's finishing off on what Ed so wisely said. The jurisdictions, you want to, just as we spoke about working collaboratively between BIDA and the city, BIDA wants to collaborate with the county and the schools as well. BIDA wants to justify taking more funds out of what would go to those taxing authorities for real reasons. And this board has on numerous occasions expressed a strong desire to see stronger workforce development activities take place in College Park. If there was a data center or one of those things coming that didn't generate a lot of jobs, I would recommend that we structure the deal to where we can capture a lot of funds from those pilot payments to go towards establishing some effective workforce development solutions for the city. This is something that BIDA can do. BIDA can set the priorities, work the deal out, create something compelling, get the sign off of the county and the schools, and then have funds both to do work like that, but then there's other fees that have come in that BIDA could use to build up its reserves. You may recall we had a presentation from another development authority's chairperson at our February training, and they do only deals. They keep nothing from pilots. They only do bond deals for fee, and they have an annual budget of $2.5 million a year. Now, they're doing it across a much bigger area than College Park could, but College Park could easily claim a tenth or a fifth of that by doing the bond deal. So, but it becomes a matter of what College Park's elected officials and appointed officials in BIDA perspective on being open for business. Because your question, Dr. Williams, to me directly was, how do we attract businesses and development? And it requires being open for business, being willing to to offer inducements or incentive programs, having cooperative planning officials, building officials, engineers to help get the processes through, having cooperative city council that's willing to help where rezoning may be needed. All of that, and then also just being reliable. The money goes where the money is safe. The money goes where the money's friends are, where there's a good reputation. The money goes where it's going to make a good return, and creating an environment that offers those things is what will attract the money. It's this board's responsibility to make sure that the community is benefiting from these deals and that incentives aren't being awarded willy-nilly. If the project can be built without the incentives, there should not be an incentive attached to it. But for is that standard. But being open for business is, once you develop a reputation for being open for business, more and more companies and developers will come your way.
Okay, Mr. Wyatt.
I just have one question. Ed, pilots are based on the assessed value of whatever is being built, right?
Yes, sir.
If memory serves me correct, we gotta do pilots a little bit different if we decide to do pilots. Because as I remember, one of those businesses went to the county and got their assessment value lowered, which means our payment went way down.
Yes, sir.
So we gotta figure out a way to make that a fixed payment or some kind of way that they can't go and reassess for a lower value.
100%.
So let's not make that mistake again.
Yes, sir. We won't.
And you want to talk about clawbacks if you have some incentives?
Excellent
and then
idea.
Why don't you just explain how we can hold
So one of the
these
things
folks
that-
accountable?
One of the things that my and LaTonya's clients, we insist upon is clawbacks. So if you go to the Fulton County Development Authority and you get a tax abatement and you promise so many jobs, nobody holds you accountable to it. You get your free taxes regardless. For all of my and LaTonya's clients, we write in the documents clawbacks. So I caution the developers, be careful what you promise, because we're gonna put it in the documents. So if my $100 million example, we're gonna put in the documents, they have to do a $100 million investment. If they promised 150 jobs, they gotta deliver 150 jobs. If they promise wages of $25 an hour and managers at $60,000 and one manager at $150,000, we put that in the documents. Every year they have to make a report. If they miss any of those categories by say 10%, they would lose 10% of that year's free taxes. And then next year it starts over again. And they call those clawbacks. Thank you, ma'am. That was very
Okay, thank you. We're gonna go ahead and adjourn. So do we have a motion to adjourn? Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Do we have time to go get a drink or?
Get some sweet tea. And, right now, I apologize for the lateness. We have a lot of guests, but the food is for our members. So I want everybody to go out and go ahead and, get your food. Thank you. What time is it? Yeah.